July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection. Headline edition will bring you special reports and interviews in a moment.
How you doing? This is a guy from Pittsburgh. You know, George Santayana said, those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it. He also said, the great difficulty in education is to get experience out of ideas. Well, there's something that happened in the recent days, that I had to literally just say something about. And that's thoroughly Modern Millie in Newton, Massachusetts, and the revisionist. And the people that think that everything is racist in our past. And, well, things aren't thoroughly modern in Newton or Boston. Thoroughly Modern Millie was a film that came out in 1967. The producer, Ross Hunter, went on to produce the first airport movie, which was a huge success. And George Roy Hill went on to be a great director and produced many films. And there's a curious thing about that movie. In the first scene, and it goes by so quickly that no one notices or pays attention to it. And it's a real focus of the movie, even though the movie is comedic and it's a musical. There's a bundle of newspapers on the ground that have been thrown out of a newspaper truck. The New York Dispatch, now that's probably a fake paper. I don't know enough about New York papers to know how many real ones they were. But the headline says, innocent girls sold into white slavery. Well, in the 1920s, when thoroughly Modern Millie occurs, white slavery was another euphemism for prostitution. And thousands of women in Europe, in Poland, 25,000 women were sold into white slavery. In the United States, and a great many of them were Jews. And I suspect Ross Hunter and George Roy Hill couldn't have done a musical about Jewish women being put into white slavery in the 20s, because it wouldn't have gone over. Because historically, Jews, like Asians, like blacks, and other minorities in this country were treated terribly. And this play was the number 10 grossing movie in that year. This movie, sorry. Then they made a play that went on Broadway and got the Tony Award for Best Musical. The play's been performed at high schools and colleges all over the country. And the revisionists say that it's racially insensitive because the portrayal of 3 people who are Chinese. Well, the lady who played Mrs. Mears in the movie Beatrice Lillie was a great Broadway actress. It was her last film. Julie Andrews has said she had Alzheimer's during the production of the film and had trouble remembering her lines. She got a Tony Award in 1953. And the whole crux of the film is not only Millie's going from a small town to the big city to find a man. She hopes to marry her boss. But also these 3 people who happen to be of Chinese ancestry. The 2 assistants to Mrs. Mears, who are reluctant. They're reluctant in the film. In the play, they're reluctant. They're only working to get money to get their mother into the country from China. But it's part of the comedic thing with Mrs. Mears because it is also a comedy. And Mrs. Mears could be black. She could be Latino. She could be white. But they focus on the fact that she's Chinese. They look at it as a stereotype. And my question is, are we to sweep under the rug every negative stereotype, every negative portrayal of an Asian, a black, a Latina, or Latino, or other minority in this country, and act like it never happened? And instead have a sanitized 1984 world where no one knows anything about history? Because the movie and the play, in the background, looming its evil hand, was about white slavery. Because the hotel where Millie is staying, women are disappearing. They're being dragged in the basement, and they're being sold off as prostitutes. And in the 20s in New York, there were dance halls. They were fronts for prostitutes. Men would pay for dances with women, and they would have sex with them at that location or elsewhere. And these women were held in bondage. They weren't allowed to escape. They weren't allowed to go back home. And we have women in white slavery today, but it's not white slavery, it's Asian slavery in massage parlors. All over San Francisco, the West Coast, and all over the country, who come here from China, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Thailand. Their passports are taken away. They're made to pay thousands to pay for their passage. And they're never allowed to leave. There have been raids on massage parlors in San Francisco where they found women living in deplorable conditions. So we have another case of revisionism gone wild, because people who don't know anything about history think it's all about racism. People love the movie and they love the play, but instead they focus on these three characters, and the school and the guy who presented it apologized, saying we blew it. Why would you apologize for something that's in the play? If there were another play dealing with white racism, would you apologize for that? Or black racism? And there is black racism. You can look on YouTube and have blacks saying that no white man can talk about black women because he doesn't have a black woman, or doesn't know a black woman, or isn't black. It's a reverse racism, and it's sometimes subtle and sometimes overt. But they change the characters. They want to change Mrs. Mears to a Southerner, and the two Chinese henchmen she has, the laundry delivery men, into undercover policemen, which destroys part of the focus of the play. I know people want me to keep doing videos on George Norrie. I'll do some of those soon. But we can't allow people to keep changing our history in plays and movies because one person or a group of people say we can't allow this to be depicted on the screen, on television, on stage, because it's racist. It bothers us. That means we lose a part of our history. Those depictions are bad, yes, but they're still part of history. And we've learned since 1967 and since 1920. The Chinese in this country built the railroads, along with the Irish and the blacks, and were horribly discriminated against, as were Japanese. But we aren't doing that anymore. In the original film, Jack Soo was one of those Chinese men. A great Chinese-American actor. Great character actor. They just did a whole retrospective of him, of his life and career in San Francisco a couple years, and the whole film and presentation of the man. Would they have cut out his portrayal in that film to say, oh, Jack Soo did everything, but we can't show you this? No. And we can't do that either. We can't cut out little segments for history like you'd edit a film strip and say we can't allow this or that to be seen. And that has nothing to do with racism. It has everything to do with censorship. And one group not allowing something to be seen that everybody should see and make their own mind up on. So I had to say something about this. I'll do some other kinds of videos, the stuff I usually do. But I've acted on stage, I've worked in stage crews, I've worked behind the scenes, and this kind of stuff drives me crazy. The revisionist, a small minority, because they feel offended, make the majority not be allowed to see anything that they don't approve of. And that's not right. And Beatrice Lillie, by the way, had a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, for those who don't know. And I don't expect any of these people to know the history of the 1920s. But I do, because my major in school was history, and I looked it up. And I had a feeling that this was the case. So take it from the guy from Pittsburgh and think about it for a minute. We need to look into our history and not allow the revisionist to destroy it and distort it. Alright, this is the guy from Pittsburgh. I'll catch you next time. And free Art Bell. Have a great evening, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.